What's up, guys? Josh Pate, 247sports.com. That's Steve Wiltfong. Your eyes are not deceiving you. It is the second edition this week of the Wiltfong Recruiting Whip Around. Might as well have the little red light emoji, Steve, because it's kind of an emergency edition. Because, man, last night, like you said before we started recording, it's a good thing you and I didn't go to bed early, or we would have woken up to news that Quinn Ewers, top quarterback in the 2022 cycle, has decommitted from Texas. He's an in-state guy. I'm going to let you take it away. Your reaction, and what does this mean for Texas? Where might he be headed now?
Quinn Ewers, the number one overall player in the top 247 player rankings, immediately trending on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball to Ohio State, including my forecast. Ohio State was the runner-up for Quinn when he committed to Texas in August. Ohio State is the program that offered Quinn first way back when. And Quinn Ewers and his family, I think they have a cabin near Columbus also. So they have some ties and some roots to the Ohio State area that also makes it convenient for them if Quinn does ultimately choose Ohio State, which I think he will. And here's why. I think he's looking for a program that has terrific quarterback pedigree that's going to maximize his potential. And I think they see that with Ryan Day in Ohio State, first with J.T. Barrett being the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year when he was under center, to Dwayne Haskins developing into a first rounder, to Justin Fields now pushing Trevor Lawrence to be the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. Then I think beyond just the pedigree, I think it's the way Ohio State builds relationships. Corey Dennis, the new quarterback's coach. This is his first major recruiting battle on the trail. He's a young man that was on 24/7 Sports 30 to know in college football under 30 2 years ago. Loses a close one to Texas in August for Quinn Ewers, but Ohio State stays in there. Quinn Ewers told me Ohio State was the program recruiting him the hardest back in July. I don't think that changed even after he committed to Texas. And then the third thing, I think that Quinn Ewers has a rapport with a lot of Ohio State recruits in this 2022 class. Ohio State has the number 2 class early on in that cycle, but they're the favorites to finish number 1, especially if they land Ewers, and I think they will.
Man, if that happens, Steve, what in the world are they doing so right up there? This staff, Ryan Day, they've become assassins on the recruiting trail. The 2021 class is right up there in the race for the number 1, but man, 2022 looks to be getting off to a very similar bang.
Look, Ohio State under Urban Meyer, we're a recruiting juggernaut that twice. They never finished number 1 under Urban Meyer in the actual category, but twice they finished number 1 in average ranking per commit. So always extremely talented. Ryan Day takes over for Urban Meyer. He sees how much time Coach Meyer spent on recruiting. Ryan Day spends just as much on recruiting, but has his own touch to it. And I think Coach Meyer is such an intense guy, and not to say that Ryan Day isn't intense, but he's like this laid back, cool dude that just is respects, and he works as hard at it as anybody. And he's leading the charge, but Ohio State's entire staff is just full of great recruiters, to the on-field assistants, to Mark Pantoni and his off-field recruiting staff, to even Mickey Marotti being arguably the best strength coach in college football. It's a well-oiled machine. But every time we update our rankings, Josh, I do a story where things stand with the top 10 uncommitted players in the country. And I think over half of them in the latest 2022 update said Ohio State was the program recruiting them the hardest, or 1 or 2 or 3 recruiting them the hardest. And you look at the crystal ball yesterday, it wasn't just Quinn Ewers, 2 other 5 stars in the 2022 class, 2 other players in the top 10 are now trending Ohio State on the crystal ball. The number 1 corner overall, Damani Jackson. And we did a story at 24/7 Sports in the summer, 10 guys who are going to be household names in college football down the road. And Quinn Ewers was one of them, and Damani Jackson was another one of them. I've always loved Damani Jackson from the moment he came on my radar. He's an incredible athlete, an absolute burner on the perimeter. There's not a receiver he's not going to be able to run with for the rest of his life. A physical, high IQ, talented, hardworking kid that fits the culture that Ohio State's looking for. Now, it's not a slam dunk for Ohio State, although I think they lead. Michigan's in there, and Georgia, Clemson, USC, of course, several others. But I like the way it's trending there for Ohio State with Damani Jackson and their pedigree, certainly at the corner position. And then Caleb Burton's the number 1 receiver in the top 247. He's also from Texas. Him and Quinn Ewers have a relationship working behind the scenes. I think that the idea of them playing together is something that they've talked about first with Texas, but now maybe Ohio State. And talking to Caleb and his dad yesterday, I think Ohio State's the clear leader for him. Brian Hartline, 24/7 Sports National Recruiter of the Year a couple years ago, or is it last year? I'm already losing track. But he's leading the charge on Caleb Burton. But this Ohio State staff, from Ryan Day on down, building just such meaningful relationships. Kerry Combs has had such many massive recruiting wins in his day in the mix with Damani Jackson. And it's just Ohio State's got a chance to get 3 top 10 guys right there. The hell, they got a chance to get 4 top 10 guys in 2021 with 2 in the fold already, and Donovan Jackson and Travion Henderson. And then maybe you still get JT and Emeka from Washington State.
So we have not spoken a lot about Sage Ryan. This is a guy that I had long since written off to LSU, Steve. It's 5-star defensive back, probably going to play safety in college. And he's from the state of Louisiana. And then all of a sudden, I start seeing my phone blow up earlier this week. Hey, man, did you hear what Wiltfong said? Did you hear what Tim Watt said over on BOL? Is Sage Ryan actually going to commit to Alabama? What has changed in this recruitment?
Well, I don't know if anything's changed. Maybe it was just a bad pulse read by us industry insiders for much of it. I think we always knew Alabama was in it, but I think you just assumed with the family ties on LSU staff, being a cousin of Kevin Falk and Trev Falk and being in state, and really LSU does a terrific job recruiting kids. I mean, this is a top 5 class for LSU, and so you got to keep that in perspective. Even though it doesn't look good for Sage Ryan right now, and that's also, we just named a bunch of guys Ohio State's in the mix for. They still got to bring it to the finish line. And so Alabama, we've seen them numerous times go into the state of Louisiana and be heartbreak you. And take an elite guy away from LSU. And Sage Ryan seems to be that guy in this class. Maybe Brian Thomas, the receiver from Louisiana, also ends up at Alabama. But I'm flipping my crystal ball from LSU to Alabama this morning, joining a lot of my colleagues for Sage Ryan, who, man, you turn on that film, Josh, he's one of the best return men in high school football. He's dynamic in the punt return. He's dynamic in the kick return. He's got blistering fast, verified athleticism times. He is an all-purpose back on offense. He can catch the ball. You can hand it to him. And then he's a hard hitter that forces turnovers on defense. There's a big need for Alabama in the secondary this cycle, and they rarely have big needs. But Sage Ryan would certainly help Alabama fill a need and give them. Might be. I thought if Ohio State landed Emeka Egbuka and JT Tuimoloau, that they'd be tough to beat at number 1, but that was before I thought Sage Ryan was going to Alabama. So that race for number 1, that's another big chip on the board for Alabama if Sage Ryan does indeed pick the Tide on Halloween.
Nick Saban's birthday, by the way, there. I don't know if that was planned. There's a 1 in 365 chance there. How about Tristan Leigh? We talk about him a lot, and so he's a guy who we've had frequent updates about, but it's warranted, Steve, because people continue to talk about him. So what's the very latest there?
Well, Tristan Leigh is the top uncommitted offensive tackle in the country, number 11 player overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite, number 4 offensive tackle. And Oklahoma, Ohio State, LSU are in the mix there. And LSU fans aren't going to really like our show today, Josh. I'm going to remind them again, they have the number 5 class right now, and they are doing well, even though some of these top targets late may be trending away. They still have a good shot at Tristan Leigh, but I get the sense that Oklahoma is the slight leader with Tristan Leigh right now. Bill Biedenbaugh is one of the premier offensive line coaches in college football. Tristan Leigh said that he sat down and had like a 30-minute discussion with Coach Biedenbaugh about the concepts and the way they play the game at the point of attack at Oklahoma. And he said he just thought he had a great understanding right there. So imagine what he could do with me in 3 to 4 years. So my takeaway with that is Tristan Leigh looks at Bill Biedenbaugh and says, man, this guy's a great communicator. He can put it out there for me to digest it quickly, and I can do my thing. And then he's close with Caleb Williams, who's from his neck of the woods. And he's close with Cullen Montgomery, an offensive lineman from Texas that's committed to Oklahoma that he spent time with at the Sooner Summit. I think him and Savion Byrd, another uncommitted blue chip offensive tackle, have formed a relationship. And I know Savion wants to play with Tristan. Now, I like where Oklahoma stands with Savion. So Ohio State's in there. They're pushing hard. Florida's recruiting that kid hard. LSU, of course. But I kind of like where Oklahoma's sitting for Tristan Leigh right now. And I'm going to move my crystal ball today, from low confidence LSU for Tristan Leigh to low confidence Oklahoma, because I think that one's going to go to January, and he's going to announce during the All-America Bowl show. That's not locked in for sure, but I think that's the way it's heading.
Man, there's a lot to talk about this week. Thus, the second and emergency edition of the Wiltfong Recruiting Whip Around. We're happy to do it. Steve, I'm just happy to be quite frank with you that my internet held up because we've had a lot of information here. Steve Wiltfong is the man to know. 247sports.com is the place to be. Keep it locked in there and subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube channel while you're at it. Steven, I think the next time I see you is next week, but we'll see.
Tuesdays now. Take care, y'all.